Hello, people of the internet, and welcome to Review Lab. I am Emma Fyffe, here to present the Metacritic scores, which represent the aggregate opinion of all critical thinking on film across the internet.
And I am Eric Goldman. I'm a real person, but am I a variant?
Are you a real person?
We'll find out.
It's a little unclear now. You know, AI has gotten pretty good.
I don't know, but I do review movies, and I'm going to sort of help you dig in here, give a little nuance and context to the numbers we're seeing today from this feature film we're going to discuss.
And the feature film that we are going to discuss today is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, directed by the trio of Joaquim Dos Santos, Justin K. Thompson, and Kemp Powers, written by David Callahan and Lorden Miller, a veritable spider team of people making this all happen. The film is out in theaters today, so this Metascore is subject to change as even more critics post their reviews. Yep. But here is how it stands with approximately 35 reviews posted. 86! Now, 86, you hear, oh, okay, that's like a B in math, but that's not the way that Metacritic works. An 86 Metacritic score is a must see.
Really good. Yeah,
it's really freaking good. Eric, what's your initial reaction to hearing this score? Because you've seen the film.
Yes, I've seen the movie twice. No, hell yeah, it is a must see. It is an absolutely fantastic movie. I think, coming off the first one, which was such a triumph itself and an Oscar-winning movie. Yeah. And there's that slight worry of can they do it again, even though you're feeling pretty confident given Lorden Miller and just the pedigree here. And they completely nail it again. It really is something special. And seeing it the second time, I really came out of it. It's just, we'll talk about some of the quibbles maybe about the movie, and it's not like it's perfect in every way, because few things are, but what it does so well. And really it's artistic triumph, I would say.
The Metascore captures how critics felt about the film overall, but here on Review Lab, we go deeper. So I went through the top critical publications to find out how reviewers felt about 5 unique aspects of Spider-Verse 2 of 3, so to speak. Here's how it all broke down. We had the plot coming in with a score of 55, animation coming in at a whopping 100, characters also 100, originality at a score of 44, and the ending with a 60. Eric, let's start with the plot, which came in with a reasonable 55. How do you feel about that score?
Yeah, it's a 50. I know it doesn't jump out at you as incredibly high, but I think that there's some nuances involved there.
Yeah, and you don't have to retake Calc 2 with a 55.
That's what I think. So.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, is it a little lower than I'd say? Yes, but at the same time, I get it. I mean, look, it's a cliche to say that there are no new stories, and it's just about how you do your story. And I also understand that not only is this a sequel, it's there's been a lot of Spider-Man movies before. I don't know if you know that.
A lot of Spider-Man.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of superhero movies, and we're very multiverse crazy right now. So on one hand, it's not like this plot is breaking ground and doing something incredibly unique. It is sort of a functional story, but it is in the execution. I think it does it very well. I think it's, it really locks in with the characters. We'll talk more about them specifically, and immerses you in it right from the get-go. And I also think there's something to be said for the storytelling in the plot here, and the way they present it. This movie, I don't want to give too much away, but the way it begins is different from the last one, kind of giving you a different point of view. So I get it that the plot would not be the first thing you'd say, like, oh my God, it's a crazy Rubik's Cube that changes everything. It is a basic is not the right word. It's a normal plot, but what they do with it, I think they do extremely well.
Yeah, Lovia Gyarke, I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, of The Hollywood Reporter, says there's a greater effort now to connect Miles' origin story to broader lessons about superhero canons that doesn't always land as gracefully, and parts of Across the Spider-Verse feel weighed down by this need to belabor a well-established point. Do you think that it was trying to hammer home these bigger lessons too much?
I don't. The funny thing is, it is paced, deliberately. It's not a slow-paced movie, but I don't think it's not like move.
Sure.
And I really like that it takes the time to breathe, and like the first one, but even more so maybe has like these character moments, these moments with Miles and his parents that are quieter. I didn't think it was belaboring it. I just think that like this is a movie that really wants to dig in deep with these people and not sort of race from scene to scene, you know?
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of where you think there is some fairness in this 55 score comes more so from the story itself rather than the execution.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I find very little fault in the execution. We'll get, when we talk about the ending, we'll talk about like one place where I understand there's going to be, so if this movie's going to have one notable criticism, it's going to be about that. But I think that the execution is pretty damn great.
Well, something that people had no criticism of whatsoever was the animation. Of course, very well established in Into the Spider-Verse. Absolutely stunning animation, and really bringing that feel of taking comic book pages and bringing them to life. I assume that that is consistent in this one.
It's fantastic. I mean, and I've seen a couple people come out of this movie and say maybe it's their new favorite animated movie ever.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people who kind of wants to sit with things a little before I can get to that. But I don't say, how dare you? How could you? Because I get it. And I also think it is, I think inarguably, one of the some of the best animation ever in an animated movie, if that makes sense. Like, it is a gorgeous movie. The first one already sort of established a template, but this one especially because even more than the first, they're getting to, the first established that the different characters from the different universes look different. You know, she looks like an anime girl because that's her world and whatnot.
Right.
Well, this one goes further and we go into other worlds more. And so Gwen's world, for instance, is all watercolor. And it is so beautiful. And there are so many frames of this movie. I'm like, I want that as a poster. I want that as a poster. Like, it is a truly gorgeous movie. I think it'd be very difficult to critique the animation here. It really is something special.
Yeah, Kate Eberlin of IndieWire says, all that jaw-dropping animation is truly in service to the story and its emotions. Colors and shadows, a flick of an eye and the flex of a hand, comic book panels styled interstitials and zingy asides all exists to advance the tale, not distract from it.
Yep, absolutely. She's referring there to, I think the first one might have done this a little bit, but this one to even more the editor's notes, like comic books do.
Oh my God, I love that.
It's super clever. And then, yeah, I do think, like, because the different worlds have different styles and the characters, it does often kind of reflect their vibe. And, you know, oh, this character is really outgoing and his world's very vibrant and this character's edgy and he's like, doesn't have as much color on him. It really is something. When I saw it the second time, and I was kind of, now that I'd seen the movie once, I was just really looking at it being like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I just, when it's on, when we have it at home, I'll just be like, freeze frame, look at that.
Yeah, I think the thing that is really brilliant about what these Spider-Verse films do is use the medium of animation to really enhance the storytelling. And again, the idea that all of this is very much in service of what is going on screen. Another facet of this film that people found no fault with was the characters, again, coming in at a score of 100.
I mean, the first one are, again, like, we already knew some of the main characters here. We already love them. It continues here. Again, you feel the filmmakers' love for, like, Miles and the fact that and their love for Rio and Jeff, his parents, and that these are not just the parent characters and they're not important. No, they are deeply felt characters too, and have wonderful heartfelt scenes. Gwen is more of the co-lead this time, but not at the expense of Miles. Like, it's not like, oh, she took over the movie. Miles is still extremely centered in this movie and important, but now we're really getting to know and dig in more with Gwen. I think Gwen was already great in the first one, but I think she's really great in this one. And I think Haley Steinfeld is excellent voicing her. And I think even more than the first one, people are going to come out of this just so into her. And then the new characters, there's a lot of great ones, but the Spot, who's one of the villains, I loved. And Spider-Punk. I think Spider-Punk's going to be a big favorite. Just he is the attitude of that character, how he looks. It's really, and like we were talking about with the execution and how it's like, well, if you care about the characters, it's okay if the story is one you've seen before.
That was exactly the point I was going to make, is it seems to me like, yes, people found fault with, let's say, the originality of the story, yet this is a film that rides on the back of the characters and fully exploring who these people are. A lot of praise for Shameik Moore, of course, who voices Miles Morales. Brian Tallarico of RogerEbert.com says, I want to give some praise to Shameik Moore, who finds the perfect register for the odd intersection of youth, manhood, and heroism in which Miles finds himself.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's funny because I did the Junker for this movie, and in person he's a little more like quiet than his character, but you're like, acting, it's a thing.
Yeah,
because I do think,
who would have thought?
Right, this Miles is about a year older, and so he's showing like, this character has matured a bit, but he's still not feeling like 100% confident in everything he does, and he's got these longings. He misses his spider buddies from the first movie. I really think he does an excellent job. Like, just the two of them, him and Haley Steinfeld together, you're like rooting for their like, will they or won't they relationship. They really bring a lot of depth to these characters.
Yeah, I mean, I cried watching the trailers.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
I feel confident in the strength of the characters in this film. One thing people were not as keen on was the originality, which ranked in at 44. The thing that's interesting is I feel like this is intricately, that's the word I'm looking for, tied in to, again, that story score, or the plot score of 55, where we're talking about maybe it's kind of lacking in originality, but when you have these great characters and this fabulous animation that is enhancing these really great characters and letting us know a lot about them visually, does the originality like really need to be there?
Yeah, and again, I think there is something intrinsic to the fact that how many comic book adaptations have we seen in the past decade? And the fact that this is opening in the middle of Multiverse Mania.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's really funny because The Flash is coming in a couple weeks, and I've seen that movie and I like that movie. There's some plot similarities.
Yeah.
There are some moments that I'm like, oh, those are very similar in those movies. And I think that's just going to happen when you are working in these realms and you are kind of pulling from, I say the same source material, not that comic books are the same, but the same sort of idea of the multiverse and how it would affect a superhero character.
Yeah, I mean, we are much like Doctor Strange, literally in our own multiverse of madness. Cinematically speaking, across the board. Tim Robbie of The Telegraph says it might be more novel at this point for superheroes to stick a pin in one reality and rip up their passports.
I mean, see, I disagree that it's like, to me, it wasn't like a minus. Like,
Sure.
I wasn't watching it being like, another multiverse movie. But I do think, of course, you're not going to be like, this is so original, the multiverse concept, just because the freaking Oscar-winning Best Picture was just all about the multiverse,
Yeah, I would literally be very curious to see where like the originality stacks up in the original Into the Spider-Verse, because I feel like at that time that was the novelty. Like, we knew we were going the direction of multiverses. Obviously, on the Flash television series, there were so many multiverses that there were no longer consequences because a character would die in one reality and they would just go get them from another reality and it was all fine. But I think that Into the Spider-Verse was one of the really first beautifully executed multiverse films.
Oh, completely agree. Because as someone who grew up reading comic books and was very immersed in multiverse stories, it is funny to think how quickly things changed, because 10 years ago, you understood that all these producers, like, we have to kind of tiptoe our audiences into this idea, because if they've never really experienced a story like this, it would be a lot to just throw at them. And Into the Spider-Verse was, like you said, it was kind of coming after The Flash and the TV show Flash had helped establish this idea for people. And even like X-Men Days of Future Past.
Sure.
And some of these things.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like people were starting, like, you felt like the mainstream was more like hip on the multiverse, But it is funny that now, 5 years later, it can be like, another multiverse story, just because that's where we are right now. We're getting a lot of multiverse.
A lot of multiverses, not necessarily a bad thing. And again, the originality certainly, or lack thereof, didn't hurt the overall enjoyment of this film.
Not in the least. Again, it's like, you can watch 10 million movies about someone avenging the death of a loved one, and you can still it's like, how much do we love the John Wick movies? Are the John Wick movies like groundbreaking, original story? I've never seen a tale like this as far as like the plot. No.
Yeah.
They're just awesome.
Yeah. They just rule. That's it. Well, moving on to that last score, we're taking a look at the ending, which came in at a score of 60. Now, this is a part one, and that had previously been made clear that this was a part one. And Eric, you were saying that you could see with the ending some of the gripes that people might have with this film.
I didn't want to kind of repeat myself too much, so I stopped myself from saying this earlier. This is absolutely half a story.
Yeah.
And it's and so when the movie ends, and yes, the movie was originally going to be called Across the Spider-Verse Part 1, and then the next one was going to be called Part 2. They decided to change that. So yes, every single person who goes into this movie won't kind of know that. And yeah, the ending is not, there's not like a huge climactic event happening because this is the first half of a book. This is the first half of a story. It's funny that I think this is happening a lot this summer. We just had Fast X do this a couple weeks ago, and Mission Impossible is coming out with Part 1 in its title with Dead Reckoning. So I think we're going to get a lot of these half a stories here. It just is, yeah, when the movie ends, you don't feel that full, like, yes, like coming out of like a story that's completely done.
Right.
You feel like, oh, I can't wait to see what's next. But it does mean that this movie doesn't end on like that, quite that huge note that I think you might be looking for.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Gerson of Screen Daily says a film this intelligent, thrilling, and inspired earns its cliffhanger ending. So it sounds like, again, there was a decent amount of positive reaction to the cliffhanger ending. And I would like to remind the internet that many people say that The Empire Strikes Back is their favorite Star Wars movie, and that's got a cliffhanger ending.
Absolutely.
Just saying.
Someone else was saying to me after the movie that it reminded them a lot of how Back to the Future 2 ends.
Great.
It's very much like, yeah, there'll be more, and you're like disappointed, like, oh, but you're not mad. You're not like,
Yeah.
I didn't feel like cheated. I felt like, oh, I'm loving this so much, and now it's going to be hard to wait a year to see what happens next. But in a good way. But I still understand that this score would not be as high as the others, even though it's better than a couple of other things. Just because, yes, this is not a full story.
Okay, so that's interesting that you bring up that it is better than a couple of the other scores, because I do sort of wonder if the plot score suffered because it was a Part 1 and they were able to like take their time and let scenes breathe. Did you feel that there was a lot of just like exploration of the characters
100%,
happening?
yeah. It's like, I do think it is all tied together, that the fact that, this is a story that doesn't feel like it has to go at breakneck speed. It's funny, in my mind, I'm thinking about how Dark Phoenix, we kind of know now, was supposed to be 2 parts and they turned it into 1. And you can kind of feel that watching the movie. Like, oh, they were suddenly had to cram a bunch of stuff that was supposed to be 2 movies. Not that we know it would have been great if it had been 2. But yeah, this is able to take its time. And I think, again, it's not like, why are we doing this character scene with these characters I don't care about? It's like, oh, this is a movie that is like, hey, we are going to take these moments. We're going to stop. Don't worry. We're going to have scenes with hundreds of Spider-Men swinging through the city, but we're also going to have these quiet moments, and we're allowed to because we know we're making 2 movies right now,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to compare, since, we're making 2 movies of this, but it was preceded by a single film that was self-contained being Into the Spider-Verse. Let's see how these 2 Spider-Verse films stack up. We have got Across the Spider-Verse with a score of 86 and Into the Spider-Verse coming in at 87. So, Eric, having seen both, is the first one just a tiny bit better?
It's so, I mean, I like that these are so close because that makes sense to me. And I'm curious, like, after we get more reviews the next couple, week or so, where it'll end up. But I think it'll stay close. The first one is, yes, start to finish, a little more quote unquote satisfying.
Sure.
Because it is telling a complete story that has an ending where you really feel like it all came together. And that is because there's a lot of things about this movie that I think might be better than the first one. But yes, if I take a step back, it's like it's half a story.
Yes.
So I do think that makes sense that the first one might edge it out a little bit because they're both so good, but that the first one just offers you that sort of complete package in the way this can't, because there's more to tell next year.
And speaking of more to tell, Spider-Man, man, that's a story that's been told a lot. Now, Spider-Man exists across a number of cinematic and otherwise universes. We're going to take a look at the live-action Sony films, the live-action MCU films, and the animated Spider-Verse films. So let's see how the Metacritic averages of all of these Spider-Verses stack up. First of all, we have got the actual Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse with an 87, the Sonyverse with a score of 67, and Marvelverse with a score of 71. I mean, Eric, Are the Spider-Verse movies the best version of Spider-Man?
I mean, right now they sure are. So we should say like the Marvelverse are the MCU, Tom
Spider-Man
Holland
films.
solo movies,
Yes.
and then I believe the Sonyverse we're talking about both the
Raimi and Amazing.
Yeah, and the Amazing stuff. This makes us like there's only been 2, right?
Right.
But they've been so great, and I suppose if you did this with only the first 2 Raimi movies, I'm sure it would be pretty high because the first one was very well liked and the second one is beloved.
Beloved.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
yeah.
so good.
But I think that I can't say for sure because I don't have the numbers in front of me as I hit my mic. But I would think that the Spider-Verse first 2 movies would still probably rank higher than the first 2 Raimi movies, even though as great as those are, because they are truly kind of reaching a level of like artistic perfection and high notes that is very hard to meet. So, I mean, it has the benefit of not as many movies, but man, are they 2 for 2. And so it doesn't surprise me.
And I think, too, that, again, we're just seeing some films that are really, as I previously mentioned, making use of the medium of animation and really embracing being animated films and how much fun you can have with that. And that already puts us in a place of, okay, like, we're going to get wild stuff thrown at us and we are here for this ride.
Yep, 100%. And then you look at, like, if you think about the Sony ones, which is really 5 movies, right? The 3 with Maguire and the 2 with Garfield. Well, he got 2 really high highs at the beginning, but then he got Spider-Man 3, and then he got the 2 others. And, you know, these are made by completely different people in different circumstances. But man, the Spider-Verse movies, they're so excellent. And I really love the Tom Holland MCU Spider-Man movies as well. And I'm glad to see they have a pretty good score. But yeah, Spider-Verse is just sort of operating at a different level. It's funny because I was thinking I was going to tweet this, and now I'm going to say it right here first instead, which is just that it's funny that as much as we lament like Sony having the movie rights to Spider-Man and some of the decisions they made, like Morbius existing, well, we wouldn't have. I will take the sacrifice of Morbius existing to get us the Spider-Verse movies, because we wouldn't have them if Marvel and Disney controlled all the motion picture
Absolutely.
rights, you know?
And also the Spider-Verse films would be so reined in by the committee of directors that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So they wouldn't exist without the freedom that Sony enables.
Yeah, the fact that Sony had the rights and that they had deal with Lord and Miller, and they're like, "Hey, want to work on this?"
Heck yeah!
I'm no matter what you think about the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies or the Venom movies or Morbius, we get the Spider-Verse movies, and that I think is it's worth it all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but don't come for Venom, all right? Because Venom is iconic. Venom. 100 Metascore from me personally. We like to close things out with some fun here on Review Lab. So today, Eric, I am going to challenge you and the viewers at home to a game.
Okay.
I am going to give you a Spider-Man film and a film starring or prominently featuring a spider. An actual one. And you can guess which has the higher Metascore. Okay, so first up, we have got Spider-Man 3. The much bemoaned Spider-Man 3 versus Arachnophobia. Which do you think has a higher Metascore?
Oh, okay, so this is tricky. Arachnophobia, I love. It's if you haven't seen it, you should check it out.
It's a good one.
It's a really fun one. Spider-Man 3, the thing about Spider-Man 3 is I don't think when Spider-Man 3 opened, its reviews were that bad. There's certain movies that like Prometheus is another one where it's like when they opened, they didn't actually get terrible reviews, but there was such like a negative reaction I think overcomes it.
It's like the opposite of a cult classic where something comes out and it gets terrible reviews and then it gains love over time.
Yeah.
This is the opposite.
This is the opposite. So I feel like these are probably closer than you might think. I actually feel when Spider-Man 3 opened, people were sort of like, hey, another great Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. I feel like Spider-Man 3 might be the higher one.
That is not correct. Spider-Man 3 has a 59 and Arachnophobia has a 67.
I agree with these numbers.
Solidly in the green category.
As much as I was predicting the opposite, check out Arachnophobia.
Yeah, 59 not bad, but 67.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have The Amazing Spider-Man versus Eight-Legged Freaks.
So, no, in my mind, Eight-Legged Freaks is way up there. Was Eight-Legged, again, I like that we're going for these like cult classic movies. Yes. Eight-Legged Freaks was even more than Arachnophobia being like purposely campy. That's not for everyone. Amazing Spider-Man. I'm going to go with the Spider-Man movie, even though in my heart, it's the opposite one. I'm going to go with Amazing Spider-Man.
This time you are correct.
Okay.
Amazing Spider-Man came in at 66, and Eight-Legged Freaks is at 53.
If you want to see young Scarlett Johansson fight giant spiders,
Eight-Legged Freaks.
Freaks.
That's the film for you. Yeah, this is interesting to me too, because Amazing Spider-Man is another one that, similarly to Spider-Man 3, I feel like was pretty well liked when it initially came out, and then as the years went on, people went, actually, I don't think this is good.
And also because the sequel, if the sequel had hit it, it would have been like, okay, because I had the feeling, I don't know, want to speak for you, but I remember Amazing Spider-Man, I was like, this is fine, even though I don't need to see his origin again. That's kind of annoying that they're doing it again. But if the sequel is great, it's fine. And then the sequel wasn't. So then I think it really affected people's thoughts on that movie.
That's how it goes. And finally, we have got the children's classic Charlotte's Web versus the OG Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
Ooh, interesting. So, so we're going with the original animated Charlotte's Web from the 70s, which I wouldn't probably have as many reviews.
That's fair.
Yeah. But Sam Raimi Spider-Man, I gotta go with Spidey on this one, even though, let's see, I'm very curious about this one.
These ones are tied.
Whoa!
Yes, they both come in at 73, putting them in that solid green, be sure to check this out category.
Spider-Man can also make humble with his web.
Yes.
What were some of the other things that Charlotte made with her web?
Oh gosh, it's been a hot
Humble's
minute.
the only one that it really sticks in my mind. That pig sitting under Humble in a web. I don't know why. But I like that it's a tie. There can be love for both of those.
We can love both of those, though. Another film prominently featuring a pig, a.k.a. Into the Spider-Verse with Spider-Ham, does outrank both of these with an 87.
I'm 90% sure that one of her webs is just some pig. I think that might be right.
Some pig.
Yes. Spencer's giving me a thumbs up, so I think that might be correct. At which both what's his name? Herbert? I can't remember.
Oh,
Wilbur. Wilbur and Spider-Ham are both some pig. So there you go. We can have coexistence here in Spider-Man and Charlotte's Web.
Exactly.
All together in harmony.
And that's the thing. We've solved the true multiverse, which is that Charlotte's Web canonically part of the Spider-Verse. That is all the numbers that we have for today. Eric, anything that the data missed that you want to convey to the people? Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, just reiterating that I really think that the fact that this is half a story is going to have a big bearing on. I'm not saying negativity is so over the top. I think because people are going to come out of this movie loving it.
Yeah.
Their only hesitation will be that it doesn't leave you on that note of closure. It's not meant to, but that's okay. I think it really. I cannot wait to see the third one, and I'm very curious what we think when we get the complete story next year, but I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, we are very curious to know what you all think as well. So be sure to log in and rank the film on Metacritic. We'll see where that score goes in the next few weeks here and discuss Across the Spider-Verse in the comments below. For myself and Eric Goldman, thank you so much for joining us here on Review Lab.
Farewell.